23,000 men vanished overnight across Europe. Pope Clement XIV signed the order himself on July 21, 1773. The Society of Jesus the Jesuits ceased to exist. Monarchs from Madrid to Lisbon celebrated. The most powerful secret society in European history was gone. But what made kings so terrified of priests and teachers? The truth is darker than you think. These weren't ordinary religious men. They were advisors to emperors. They controlled universities in 24 countries. They ran trade networks worth millions. And they answered to nobody except their superior general in Rome. Portugal's prime minister called them the greatest threat to every throne in Europe. France's King Louis XV personally ordered their expulsion. Even the Pope feared what they'd become. By 1773, they operated in 42 nations. They educated the children of every royal family. They knew every political secret. They had enough power to topple governments. And they did exactly that. It started innocently enough in Paris on August 15, 1534. 7 students gathered in a chapel on Montmartre Hill. Led by Ignatius of Loyola, they took vows of poverty and obedience. Their mission seemed simple: spread Catholicism and educate the faithful. Pope Paul III officially recognized them in 1540. The Society of Jesus was born. Within 20 years, they had opened 74 colleges across Europe. By 1615, that number hit 372. They taught Latin, philosophy, mathematics, and rhetoric. Sons of nobles sat beside sons of merchants. The Jesuits didn't charge tuition. They made education accessible. But here's what nobody noticed at first. Every graduate remained loyal to his Jesuit teachers for life. When those boys became ministers, generals, and kings, they sought Jesuit counsel. By 1640, Jesuit confessors sat beside thrones in Austria, Poland, Bavaria, and France. They heard royal secrets in confession. They advised on wars and treaties. They whispered in the ears of power. The Portuguese King John IV had a Jesuit confessor named Father Fernandez. The Holy Roman Emperor Ferdinand II trusted the Jesuit Father Lamarmane above all advisors. In France, Father Lachaise served as confessor to King Louis XIV for 34 years. These priests knew everything: state secrets, military plans, royal scandals. And their ultimate loyalty wasn't to any king. It was to their superior general in Rome, a man they called the Black Pope. Meanwhile, Jesuit missions expanded into Asia and South America. They built profitable trade routes: sugar plantations in Brazil, silver mines in Peru, tea trade in China. By 1750, Jesuit enterprises generated revenue exceeding 25 million livres annually. That's roughly 40 million today. Then came September 3, 1758. Someone tried to assassinate King Joseph I of Portugal. His carriage was ambushed outside Lisbon. Gunmen fired multiple shots. The king survived with wounds to his arm. Portugal's Prime Minister, Sebastião José de Carvalho, later Marquis of Pombal, launched an investigation. What he found made him furious. Several Jesuit priests had connections to the Tavora family, the prime suspects. Father Malagrida had been confessor to the Duchess of Tavora. He'd spoken against the king's policies from the pulpit. Pombal needed no more evidence. On January 12, 1759, he ordered every Jesuit expelled from Portugal and its colonies. Soldiers arrested 1,171 Jesuits. They were shipped to papal states in chains. Their property was seized. Their colleges closed. Their wealth, estimated at 9 million cruzados, went to the crown. But that was only the beginning. France watched Portugal's move closely. French Jesuits controlled enormous wealth through overseas investments. In 1760, Father Antoine Lavalette, head of the Martinique mission, defaulted on debts totaling 2.4 million livres. French creditors sued. The scandal exposed the vast commercial empire Jesuits had built in secret. Sugar, coffee, slaves. The society had become a trading corporation disguised as a religious order. The French Parliament ordered an audit. What they discovered shocked everyone. Jesuit assets in France alone exceeded 80 million livres. That's 0.7 billion in today's money. On November 26, 1764, King Louis XV signed the order. All Jesuit schools in France were closed. Their property was confiscated. Over 3,000 Jesuits were forced to leave. Spain followed in 1767. King Charles III signed the Pragmatic Sanction on February 27. Within 24 hours, soldiers simultaneously raided every Jesuit residence in Spain. The operation was executed with military precision. They arrested 2,746 Jesuits in a single night. All were deported to Italy. The king's official reason? Grave reasons I keep locked in my royal heart. He never explained publicly. But historians found his private correspondence. The Jesuits had opposed his reforms. They'd encouraged rebellion in Spain's South American colonies. In Paraguay, Jesuits had established semi-independent settlements called reductions. These territories operated outside royal control. They had their own armies, their own economy. Spain's colonial governors couldn't touch them. By 1773, Catholic monarchs across Europe had expelled the Jesuits. But they still existed legally under church law. They could regroup. They could return. The Bourbon kings of France, Spain, and Naples knew this. They sent ambassadors to Rome with an ultimatum for Pope Clement XIV. Suppress the Society of Jesus completely, or face a schism that would split the Catholic Church. The Pope resisted for 4 years. He knew the Jesuits had powerful defenders. He feared what their global network might do. But the pressure became unbearable. On July 21, 1773, he signed the brief Dominus AC Redemptor. The Society of Jesus was abolished worldwide. Its superior general, Lorenzo Ricci, was arrested and imprisoned in Castel Sant'Angelo. He died in captivity 2 years later, maintaining innocence until his last breath. 23,000 Jesuits lost their identity overnight. Some became diocesan priests. Others left the church entirely. Their missions in Asia and South America collapsed. Their schools, 476 of them, were handed to other orders or closed. Their libraries, containing hundreds of thousands of rare books, were scattered and sold. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. 2 monarchs refused to enforce the papal decree: Catherine the Great of Russia and Frederick the Great of Prussia. Both were not Catholic. Both saw the value of Jesuit education. In Russia and Prussia, Jesuits continued operating openly. They kept their schools running. They trained a new generation. They waited. For 41 years, the society survived in those 2 countries. Then, in 1814, Pope Pius VII reversed the suppression. Napoleon had just been defeated. The old order was being restored across Europe. The church needed the Jesuits again. On August 7, 1814, the Society of Jesus was officially restored worldwide. The Jesuits came back. Within 50 years, they reopened schools in 46 countries. By 1900, they numbered 15,073 members globally. Today, there are over 15,000 Jesuits operating in 112 nations. They run 189 colleges and universities. They educate roughly 3 million students annually. Their influence never truly disappeared. It just adapted. So what actually happened here? For 233 years, the Jesuits built an empire of influence disguised as education and faith. They controlled information. They shaped the minds of future leaders. They accumulated wealth and political leverage until monarchs saw them as threats to sovereignty itself. The suppression wasn't about religion. It was about power. About who controls the next generation. About whether loyalty to an international organization can override loyalty to a nation. These questions didn't die in 1773. Today, we see the same patterns everywhere. Tech companies shape young minds through platforms. International corporations answer to shareholders, not governments. Information networks operate across borders beyond any single nation's control. The Jesuits proved that influence isn't always loud. Sometimes the most powerful forces operate in plain sight, one student at a time. If a story like this kept you here, subscribe because there's a new mystery every week. And here's what I still can't figure out: if the Jesuits could survive suppression by hiding in just 2 countries, what other secret societies are quietly waiting in the margins of history right now? Subscribe for a new dark truth every day.